now we're moving on to the keynote panel part of the evening. And I'd like to introduce the moderator to you. This gentleman is a staple in the LA technology scene, having worked at companies such as Glue Mobile, EA, and Yahoo. And today he is currently the Executive Vice President of Digital for BBC Worldwide. I'd like to bring to stage Robert Noshak. Robert?
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you and good evening. Tonight, I think you're in for a real treat. Our topic, who's in control? As we all know, consumers of media have increasingly become empowered by the choices they have in the consumption of media. They're cutting the cord, they're turning to video and on demand and SVOD services. Something like 29% of people under 25 get all or most of their TV online. These are pesky media consumers, especially the young ones. They want shows and movies and games they love when they want them, and they want them on the screens and devices of their own choosing. So the ever-expanding choices in the discovery and consumption of media is hugely disruptive. We all get that. But tonight, we want to turn our attention to what is potentially an even more disruptive trend. We live in a deeply participatory culture, and the people, especially the young people who are watching your shows and movies and playing your games, they want a voice. They want a greater connectivity to the content they love, and they want to actively participate in, influence, and in some instances co-create the entertainment they enjoy. So what does that mean for the future of media exactly? Well, we'll get into specifics shortly, but first to the panelists. I'm confident that our panel tonight will both surprise and delight you, and maybe if we're lucky tonight, we'll get some hotly contested views on the future of entertainment. Represented on this panel is one of the world's fastest growing online games for boys. We also have the largest entertainment network on YouTube, generating 2 billion video views per month. We have a $4.2 billion global IT company heavily focused on blurring the lines between media content and technology. We have one of the most provocative and opinionated opinionators on games that you'll ever meet. And we also have one of the great minds behind Guitar Hero, and more recently, the video game toy hybrid Skylanders. Skylanders, since it launched in October, has scored over $200 million in North America alone. And Wired magazine recently described it as kiddie crack. So this is our panel this evening, and I will now ask them to introduce themselves to you. Laird?
Evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Robert. My name is Laird Malamud. I am former SVP from Activision and worked on a few of those games that Robert mentioned. Currently an educational consultant for the Gates Foundation and working at USC teaching video game production. I decided after making a bunch of games it was a good time to go into education and see if I can have an impact there. It's just a pleasure to be here, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Gerard Johnson. I'm a principal in the Media and Entertainment group at HCL, working with a broad range of customers in that group. HCL being an IT global services company. And we're doing a lot of interesting things that we'll get into as the panel goes along. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Dylan Collins, and this is pretty much the smartest I've ever looked. I was warned by Robert to wear a jacket and even a tie, so I got as far as the jacket. I'm chairman of a company called Fight My Monster. We're the fastest growing online game for boys in the UK and increasingly in the US. Previously, I founded a couple of other games companies, Jolt, which was acquired by GameStop, and Demonware, which was acquired by Activision, Laird's old company.
Hi, I'm Nanea Reeves, and I'm Hawaiian and Irish, like our president. Used to work with Robert at EA, was most recently at a company called Gaikai that Sony just bought, cloud gaming company, and have worked in the games and mobile and online space for a long time. Machinima is the #1 entertainment network on YouTube. We have a very specific audience. They're young, they're male. They watch YouTube instead of television. They play video games instead of going to the movies. And you know, there's a lot of energy in that ecosystem. So I think there'll be a lot to talk about tonight.
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Marcus Beer, and apart from having the coolest last name on the panel, I am the opinionated one that was mentioned earlier. I have spent 20 years in the games industry, both as a publicist and now back as a journalist. I go under the moniker Annoyed Gamer because I figure why should Gordon Ramsay and Simon Cowell be the only grumpy British people in media in the US? So yes, I have my own show on GameTrailers.com, and yeah, I care about video games, and I am not afraid to piss people off, but I promise that's the only swearing you'll get from me tonight. Thank you.
Oh, bummer. So, welcome panel. Thanks for coming. I thought we could start with Dylan. So,
Awesome.
Dylan, I know you went to watch the Coder Dojo panel before, and I saw that you and both Nene were watching the kids. And you're a father, you're heavily involved in the kids' online space. And I'm just wondering, from your point of view, what are kids coming to expect from media, coming to feel entitled that media should offer them? And what do you think that holds for their expectations moving forward for other kinds of media?
And you want me to answer that in about 3 minutes, right?
Take your time.
I'm pretty sure that this generation of kids growing up is going to be the most disruptive generation that we've ever seen in entertainment in general. Actually, I'd just be curious, who in the audience, who has kids? Show of hands? Okay, it's quite a lot if you look around. And of those of you who have kids, put up your hands whose kids have your iTunes account right now. That's quite a lot as well, yeah. I think, you think about this generation, and they've grown up with access to things like iOS, to internet penetration far greater than we could ever dream of. Neil was talking about just how much time kids spend on YouTube. I think, to me, the really interesting thing, and you see it with Coder Dojo, is that we're also witnessing a change in how kids want to engage. It's not just straight consumption anymore. They want to be makers. They want to be creators. There's a kid in Ireland called Jordan Casey, he's one of the youngest iOS developers in Europe at the moment. You heard it from a lot of the kids in the Coder Dojo session today as well. They're making their own games for themselves. In 2 or 3 or 4 years' time, I predict that you're going to see the first multi-millionaire 14-year-olds whose companies have been acquired by the likes of EA and Zynga and Sony, simply because they can make games for their peer group better than we can. If you remember the reasons that Facebook was so successful, it was built by a guy like us for people like us. Kids are doing that right now themselves. The frameworks are there. They're able to make games.
When we have kids making $100,000 a month on our network, creating entertainment content around games. Our top guy in the UK worked at McDonald's last year, and now he just bought his first house. He's 19. So it's, I think the monetization ecosystem has shifted as well. So, there's some challenges, though, around IP ownership. That
I'll tell you one of the biggest challenges is trying to convince a 12-year-old to take a term sheet from you.
I do that a lot. Really? Yeah.
Talk.
Yeah.
So my favorite new term of the month is, instead of entrepreneur, teentrepreneur. So I think, I suspect that in order to get into good colleges one day, you're going to have started a company.
Yeah, indeed.
But Dylan, while we're still on you, talk a little bit about Fight My Monsters. Give us a sense of what the gameplay is like. What are kids doing there that you think is indicative of, what they want to do moving forward with other media?
So a year and a half ago, Fight My Monster was 2 guys in a garden shed in London. And today it's the fastest growing game for 8 to 12 boys in the UK. The team is mostly based in San Mateo right now. It's an online trading card game. So think Pokemon meets Pixar, and it'll give you a pretty good sense of what it is. Each time I've started companies over the years, there's been a whole bunch of very sensible people who told me that it wasn't going to work for various reasons. We were told when we started Fight My Monster, when we started to really grow it, that kids gaming was always going to be too tough to break into, and it was very hard to figure out what kids want. We took a different angle with a trading card game. So in Fight My Monster, kids can customize their own trading cards. They can personalize them. They're all completely unique. And this is something that hadn't really been done before, certainly not by Pokemon or anything like that. So as a result, almost 2 million kids have now created almost 10 million trading cards. they spend more time on Fight My Monster. In fact, they spend twice as much time on Fight My Monster than the average Facebook user in the UK. So they're fully engaged. And I think we got it right by one, ignoring everything that Zynga learnt in terms of social gaming. So Fight My Monster is fun to play. It's an actual adventure. I think the second thing was that we... Hold on. Is there anyone here from Zynga? Awesome.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, nice, okay. So the second thing is that we really focused on visual design. If you or any of your kids look at Fight My Monster, which I would really encourage you to do, and also give them money to pay for a subscription, you'll see that the visual style is really, really strong. So there's this huge movement in software right now to go for agile and lean development and just throw something up there and iterate and iterate. Sometimes that works. For kids, it doesn't. They want something really good. And they want something qualitatively that looks fantastic. And I think we kind of bundle those things together, and as a result, we've got a franchise that's growing really, really fast.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nanea, let's turn to you for a second.
Sure.
And let's take a deeper dive into how fans and audiences are engaging around the content and the brands that they love. Could you go a little bit into what Machinima actually is for people who might not know?
Yeah, sure. We create content that appeals to boys who like video games. But we also find out who's influential on YouTube, and we recruit them into our network and we monetize them. We try to identify the attributes of what will take a fan and turn them into a super fan, and then what makes them influential. And then, you know, hopefully this helps fund them to create more content. We help them organize their content in a way where it'll be discoverable and you know, nurture talent. So it was interesting to hear Chuck talk about, you know, how he does that at NBC Universal, and we're kind of doing that on YouTube right now.
So what is the content that they're creating, and how are they creating it?
You know, it's interesting because we were talking about movie trailers and how they really haven't changed in the last 20, 30 years. You know, you have Don LaFontaine's voice on there in a world, you know, in Ireland, and these smash cuts and music, and then the credits. And we see a kid on our network, Toby Turner, he'll take that same trailer and he'll sing a literal narration over it that's kind of funny. And you don't know whether he's making fun of it or not, but it'll get 40 times the views that the movie trailer released by Hollywood will get. And so I think that's one concept of what they're doing. Oftentimes they do game tutorials, and we had an interesting thing though. We analyze, you know, all the data coming in, and this is one of the benefits about being online is you can see what's happening and respond right away to it. And there was one kid in Sweden who focused on the gore game category, which is very niche. And all of a sudden, he's the #1 on our network, and we went, what the hell is going on? And we had all the engineers looking and thinking, you know, there must be something fraudulent about his spiking. And we looked, he was appealing to 13 to 17-year-olds, and he was using the YouTube annotations to kind of tell the story through the game and kind of interact with the audience more than we've ever, and in a creative way. But then I went, wow, that is so weird. He's got 47% of his audience is female, which makes no sense. So I went and I looked at his channel in more detail, and I went, oh, he's cute.
Yeah.
You know, and he had done a lot of ancillary social networking on Tumblr, and we started looking at all of his online activity and these attributes. So now we're going to actually take those attributes and see if we can replicate it with someone else. And this is the ecosystem that we're dealing with, and I'm so excited to be there because I've been working, as you know, because we work together at this intersection of commerce, content distribution, and community for a while. It's something I've actually specialized in this business. And to bring it into entertainment content and how to engage the audience, it's very exciting.
And what's exciting to me is they're doing it with other people's IP often.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure it's not exciting
content.
to a lot of the people out there because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
But the games industry has always been very open about letting people do things with their IP.
And Marcus, you
Well,
could certainly
ish.
speak to that, right?
Ish, yeah,
Yeah.
ish.
I'll actually, ish is the operative word. I mean, this is the thing. And how many of you here are creative people with, work for companies with IPs? I mean, obviously we know Sony has a bunch of IPs. I mean, how many of you work in a creative environment where your company owns, whether it be stories, comic books, TV shows, webzines? 1, 2. All right. Okay. There's a bunch of you. Great. The message I will give to you is don't be too precious with your IP, because this is the biggest problem that you will run into over the next 15, 20 years. People care. And in this age where everybody is on Twitter and on Facebook, the games industry has seen the rise of something that I call the entitled gamer, otherwise known as annoying little shits.
Hey, that was the second curse, by the way.
Shit's not a curse word.
All right.
But I mean, this is what they are. They're the ones who annoy the crap out of you, the IP owner, because they're the ones who'll go off and do mods of a Lord of the Rings game for somebody else's game. And you'll get all upset, and the lawyers will be brought in, and it'll be a cease and desist, and then all of a sudden everybody's crying, and some 14-year-old somewhere is trying to jump off a bridge. The issue is that you guys should be working with these guys, because at the end of the day, they're your fans.
They'll make a video. And they'll make a video about what you did to them.
Yeah, I mean, they'll put it out there, but they're your fans. They love your IP. If they love your IP enough to put 100, 200, 300 hours in to create a mod for a game called Skyrim, which is one of the biggest selling PC games of last year, but it's very moddable. You can actually create new content for it. People have done Mad Max content for it. Somebody tried to do Lord of the Rings, but they got shut down by Warner Brothers.
I actually have a strategy for making sure that our IP stays as open as possible with that. I sat all our lawyers down, and I said, okay, here's the deal. You get 100 words that you can say to me each month.
Yeah.
Right? And that worked pretty well.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, when I was at Vivendi, we had a couple of games that were really old games, hadn't done anything with them for several years, and a bunch of fans around the world wanted to make a new version of a game in the universe. And I sat down with the lawyer, because initially everybody's like, oh, no, we can't do this. They're ripping off our IP. Well, they didn't want to do it to make money. They wanted to do it because they and other people wanted to make a game that we weren't going to make. So we sat down and we created a non-commercial license, which basically says, you can't sell this. You can't put porn in this. You can't put swears or whatever. But, I mean, there were limitations, but they could go off and do this. And the amount of goodwill that brought from that community, that made fans for life, because these guys realized that, oh, you know what? They care that we want to do this stuff. And at the end of the day, it's great with regards to bringing in cash, because obviously we're not all here just to have food and drink. We all want to make money. We all want to have nice houses. And if you have a fan or a bunch of fans who feel that you are giving them stuff, you are respecting their opinions, you got fans for life, you got customer loyalty, and they will buy your game. They will buy the Blu-ray of your TV series, they'll buy the comic books, they'll buy the t-shirts, because they are more invested. I mean, if you ever want to see the sort of people I'm talking about, just go to Comic-Con. Go and see these guys dressed up. Go and go and look at the fan fiction they write. And this next evolution of video game developers, content producers on Machinima or on other sites, they are the fan fiction writers of 5, 10 years ago. They are evolving into a new area. And they are also, they're your prime evangelists, but not only that, they're potential employees. Because you look at some great games that have come out over the past couple of years, companies have picked them up, hired the people, and all of a sudden, everybody's making money.
Well, and they can be extremely influential as well. We had one fan, or one of our influencers, just talk about a game, and he generated 50% conversion rate, where the organic one was only 4%. We saw some of our friends who used to work at BioWare did this gamer social network, and they asked us if we would have one of them look at it. And this guy just looked at it and mentioned it in a video that he had done this thing, and they got 50,000 registration signups just from that mention. So I think that there's a way that you can get these kids, these fans, to be ambassadors for your brand, for your movie, but it has to be authentic, and that's where it becomes really important, because as soon as they get pushed down from saying that a game sucks or a movie sucks, they lose their street cred.
So totally hear you. What about the less ardent fan, the one who still wants to participate in new ways? I'm thinking about Guitar Hero, Larry,
Right.
this billion-dollar franchise of Activision's. Can you talk a little bit about, the fan involvement in that? That's a really, it's air guitar, but it's you're building something that people co-create as they play, right?
Well, absolutely. I think that's a good point. In fact, I have an example that goes with a little bit with what Marcus was saying, so I'll start with that and then expand the answer, which is one of the things that fans of Guitar Hero like to do early on. We purposely put in some very difficult songs to play. Now, if you don't know the Guitar Hero mechanic,
Stella.
Stella for sure. It's basically a rhythm matching game. You do have a physical piece of plastic. Was quite an experience to learn how to make all that in China and bring it over here. And people would put videos of them completing these very difficult songs. And you could measure the success of the game. If you look at the unit sales, Guitar Hero had a curve, I'll put it from your direction, right? Sort of limited constraint, super hot, must be for Christmas gift, and then kind of peaked here at Guitar Hero 3, and then fell off and is actually not, is only on sale in discount chains now. And same with Rock Band, which was created by the same company. And they would so you could see the number of days it would take to complete the game through YouTube. And the first game, the first game to have this took about 2 weeks, and by the time we were done, it was about 3 hours. And a lot of this content would then get pulled down off YouTube because it's got everybody's copyright material in it, right? It's got Activision's, it had the music companies, it had performers, and we would get these angry emails, and we even had kids come and play and give us feedback, and they're like, "Why'd you take down my YouTube video? You're ruining me. My friends loved it." And we're like, and we hadn't actually taken it down. We hadn't gotten around to it. We were too slow. And they were taken down by somebody else. And so the fans will come in, and what we found really interesting was both the combination that you found these pairs of people. So, person A would put up their video, and then person B would put up their better video, and they kind of were having this battle of the bands through online posting. And it was, of course, then they were being followed, and that was getting people to go buy the songs. Or somebody would download. We sold more songs online through the Sony PlayStation and through the Xbox network. And so if you didn't have the new song, then you couldn't play against your friend, and they'd have to go get the song. That kind of worked. And so so there's two dynamics going on: kids playing through next to each other and through the internet. And then, but what I think was really more important for maybe this audience and for all of us was the multi-generational play, right? Because one of the big things, we had bands come in and just thank us for putting their song in Guitar Hero, which we had licensed from our partners at Universal or here at Sony, and just because we liked the song, right? A bunch of 40-plus-year-olds making rock games, and because it's what we listened to, and so then these kids would start playing it and play with their parents, and so that influence of being able to share an experience, which can happen with film and television. It can happen with some of the material that you guys are working on. Became a very binding moment when we would do focus groups. We'd actually bring in parents and kids together to hear what their likes were. And the follow-up question is like, well, what happened, Laird? What did you do to Guitar Hero? And the answer is we had such a good play mechanic that we were petrified to change it. And then as soon as you don't change anything, the audience is like, well, I've been challenged. I'm done. Thank you. I'm gonna go fight some monster somewhere.
Very good. So I remember a study I saw at Yahoo where we brought kids in and asked them what it was like to go to the movies, and they said it's not fun. I can't talk to my friends and I can't text while I'm in the movie theater, and it's in the dark. And you can see why that could be a sentiment that kids would express based on what we're hearing. Let me turn to you for a second, Jerry. It would be great if you could elucidate some of the ways you're working at this nexus between technology and content, particularly with the media companies you're working at. It's beyond games. There are fundamental changes happening where technology and content in some ways are merging in weird ways.
Sure. So one interesting comment I want to make before I answer that question is, with a bunch of teenagers at home, it's interesting to hear the squabbling that goes on between them now is about my 12-year-old trying to negotiate with my 14 and 16-year-old about they need to get off Netflix because his gameplay on Xbox Live is slowing down and he's getting popped in the head all the time, which is a very different type of squabble nowadays than...
You only have one network and 3 kids?
Yes. And then also to your point, I mean, as many lives ago playing in a band, I kind of relived that past with Guitar Hero and Rock Band. And it's not so much about the music, but it's about how tough and how can I master some of those songs, which, funny enough, make its way, well, prior to Guitar Hero, I would never be able to put on, 70s or 80s on XM. Well, today, they kind of relate to when those songs come on, right? So it's that, kind of media thing. So to your point, when we look at content and the making really content discoverable and some of the things that we're doing at HCL, we can all agree that, the traditional way of TV watching is collapsing. I think how people are discovering content, I think, content producers like Sony and Viacoms of the world and so on are investing tremendous amount in producing that content. It's their IP, they obviously want to hold on to it. And, making that content discoverable, I think, is a key thing. When you look at how guides have evolved over the last 30 years, colors have changed, maybe screens have kind of widened a bit, but for the most part, they're very kind of sequential, right? It's by channel, it's by time, and so on. So some of the interesting things that we're doing also with some of the content producers is really doing some R&D in a way in which, can we, behind the scenes in a very non-intrusive way, really understand what they're watching, what are some of the sentiments that go along with it. It's not about, you watch this, therefore we'll recommend that. But it's really about, can we do some kind of big data stuff? Can we really do some business intelligence stuff as far as understanding really what kind of motivates you to watch certain content? And is there a way where we can, behind the scenes, really recommend? So, picture a world where instead you have 500 channels and you're kind of sequentially watching it through. You have this notion of a smart guide, and perhaps all of a sudden all the content is a lot more relevant to you, right? And allowing people to do that kind of stuff. So we have that first-hand perspective when we work with companies like Viacoms and Scripps and so on, all the way to a lot of companies that distribute content, whether it be the Cablevisions or the Verizons, who are also doing a lot of leading-edge stuff, right? You can kind of say, in that market, I think the cable market has been very fragmented. There's been, some would say, kind of an old person perspective on, this is our content, this is our kind of walled garden, don't come in here. That's opening up. We're seeing a lot of cooperation between a lot of these entities, a lot of sharing of information. And because at the end of the day, the customer really is in control, right? If you're not going to provide that to them, they're going to go find that content somewhere else. There's lots of platforms. With or without you, they're actually going to.
So we're hearing a lot about second screen apps. Everyone's on their tablet device when they're watching TV. What's going on in your space right now that's sort of enabling people to interact as they're watching television, anticipating the days where I think we'll have truly interactive television?
Sure. So I think second screen experience is not about taking content that looks beautiful on a 40-inch HD and streaming it on your iPad, right? It's about that complementary experience. It's about, at the end of the day, what's the best experience for the device. So you're watching content on a beautiful HD or a 4K Sony TV, and you have really an engaging experience. And maybe there's some social aspects that you can bring in on your tablet, on your iPhone. There are some, tweet about it. There's some real-time feedback that can actually be brought into it. We've seen what Bravo is doing with some of those experiences. We've seen what the HBO Go app. I think today those are a little bit confined, but I think as some of these operators move into true two-way type connection type devices, you'll see a lot more flexibility in building really interactive applications.
So it feels like to me that you said two things that I think won't pass the grandkid test. Your grandkid's going to say, you had 500 TV channels, and if I put a gun to your head, you could probably name 10 if you were lucky. That's one thing. And then this whole idea about sort of interactive TV, the joke would be you actually interacted your television by picking up your phone and voting for contestants. That's all going to seem so kind of old-fashioned. What's going on in your world, Marcus, that you think is going to change the way TV operates too?
Well, following on from your point, the second screen stuff, Nintendo is about to launch the Wii U, which is the successor to the biggest selling console of all time. How many of you have a Wii at home? And how many of you have Wii Fit? You sad so-and-sos. Anyway, but the Wii U is a new console that comes with a tablet. And that is going to bring the second screen system to gaming. And there are people developing games now, whether it be Batman Arkham City or Call of Duty. There's Skylanders is coming, and this is all second screen technology. So there is a whole generation that in 4 to 5 weeks' time, that's all they will know with regards to consoles, because Sony is also doing something very similar. We saw the Wonderbook earlier. Microsoft have announced plans for Windows tablets that work with Xbox Live. And this is the future. I mean, this is it. I mean, it is multitasking. It is ADD gaming or ADD watching TV. The one thing I will say is it's not all about just kids. In the last 10 years, the median age of a video gamer with a disposable income has gone outside of that fantastic 18 to 34 age group. The median age of a gamer now is, for a male, is 39 years of age. Because these are the guys who, like me, started playing games when they were 11.
All the women just moaned in the audience.
Yeah, well, I mean...
But anybody in sales just got excited.
Yeah, I mean, basically, these are the guys who, the girls, you don't have to worry about it. Your boyfriends do not fall into this category. But, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm 41 years of age. I've been playing games since I was 10. I reviewed my first video game at the age of 21. So, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, and there are people who started with Sega Genesis, the Super NES, the Apple. I mean, these guys are now getting older, and girls. There are older girl gamers, too.
And we like to kill things, too. They're not all about hair and makeup.
Oh, exactly. Especially,
or knitting.
Or knitting. Exactly.
Yeah, the Barbie simulators always go great. But, I mean, you got to remember that it's not just the teenagers now who are controlling, who are controlling what is bought. The ones who are my age, I mean, I don't have kids, and I'm bloody happy with that. Thank you very much. I'm not letting a child name on my Xbox. But I mean, I've made a conscious decision. I don't have kids. I have nephews. I have nieces. They're 8,000 miles away. I like it. But I spend a lot of money on Blu-rays. I spend a lot of money on my cable subscription, on Xbox, on getting a new PC, on buying games. And there are a lot more like me. There are a lot more couples who aren't having kids, who aren't, don't really bother with, the whole family thing, because we have our own selfish little world. And you shouldn't forget these guys. You shouldn't forget that they are just as invested. I mean, there is a BBC show called Doctor Who. I have been watching that since I was 4. And you know exactly how invested I am with that show, because you invited me to Comic-Con and I got to meet the cast. I was probably the oldest nerd there, but I mean, I will buy anything with Doctor Who on it, and there are more people like me out there. So it's not just the teenagers, it's not just the 10-year-olds. I mean, they are the future, but sometimes you just got to look after the now as well, because as I get older, the median age of the gamer will get older. In 20 years' time, we will have gamers who are 60, 65, 70 years of age, and they'll still want content, and they will expect exactly what kids are expecting nowadays.
So how do you feel, what do you think the people who make Doctor Who at BBC feel about letting the fans create stuff around Doctor Who?
Well, I mean, I know there's a lot of fan fiction. Yeah. I mean, we see Inspector Spacetime on was it Parks and Rec or Community, one of the NBC shows. I mean, there's a lot of homages. And I think, to be fair, I mean, considering it is the BBC's biggest brand globally, BBC have actually been and I'm not saying this because you're sitting there and you're going to send me Doctor Who toys.
Are you? And me. And me.
I asked first. Don't get uppity with me, Irish.
I get the Amy Pond stuff.
I met her. Anyway, sorry. No, I think, look, this is a double act. Dinner and a show. I mean, seriously.
Gentlemen, bring it in.
It's all about just being. It's all about respecting and trusting. Respecting and trusting your audience. If they go off the reservation and all of a sudden Doctor Who is wielding a chainsaw while doing rude things to a goat while covered in lime green jello, that's a little bit outside what your brand parameters are. But if it fits in the brand parameters, let people run with it, because they could do so much for you.
I think that you picked up on one thing I want to pick up something that you said, or implied anyway, which is the portability. And not only do they want their content, but they want it where they want it. Yeah. And so one of the things that we fought for on Skylanders, which was described briefly, is basically you get a video game, you get 3 toys, you get a portal, if you put the character on the portal, it shows up on the screen. If you switch characters, it switches on the screen. The beauty of it and why it's been labeled as perhaps a starter drug is because there's 29 more characters to collect and enjoy, and a whole bunch shipping next week. And I can brag about it because I'm not at Activision anymore, so I'm not even shilling for it. But one of the things we fought for, so Skylanders was supposed to come out in 2010, and we decided that that hook was very cool, but didn't go far enough. The game needed more depth, and one of the key features we had planned for 2011, which couldn't be ready in 10, we wanted for launch, which was that the characters remember their statistics. And what that means is it's not saved on the local console, it's saved on the toy. The toy is alive on the inside, we would say. And so that means if I go to your house and I bring my Skylanders with me and we play at your house, I can collect my more gold and I can power up and I can go home and put it back on my system. And we made it system interoperable. So, and this was a tremendous achievement, and we have great partnership from Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft to let us do this. This was the first game to do that. And we found that the #1 driver for kids finding out about more Skylanders was, of course, their friends who had already acquired them. And how did they do that is that they would go over with their little collection of Skylanders and, oh, you have that one, I don't have that one yet. And then the nag factor went into place, and at only $8 for the next one, that was actually something that a mom could go to the store and not feel terribly guilty about. And it started with this idea that their game, we unleashed their game. They could go where they wanted to go, and of course, we added a free-to-play online model as well, which is, there was no even monetization on it. It was just, if you just bought a toy for $8, you didn't buy the whole starter pack, you could go online and play for free.
Well, and that's something I think we all have to think about as content creators, no matter what medium, is to get it out on multiple devices.
Yes.
And so, a lot of businesses, and I don't totally agree with the console strategy of being a dedicated gaming device being viable anymore. And you can see Microsoft really very well executing, as well as Sony, on becoming more of a media hub. I think that has to be the long-term play. And then, persona management is very important for the household. How do you get the content right for little Jimmy? And,
right.
The weird uncle in the back might want to watch something totally different. And
she looked at
being
you.
able, yeah. And there's also the economics change too, because what portion of your experience should be free, and where do you put up that paywall? It varies on country, it varies on demographic, because you have to figure out the methods of payment, et cetera.
That's right.
This is all very much requires data-driven.
Yeah.
Decision making.
Honestly, and that's one of the things games is teaching the rest of the industry right now, how important is data right now.
E-commerce and porn actually teach the... Yeah.
Porn pretty much took on
Games took
everything.
over from porn, because porn is not making any money right now.
So, before we end the panel, what I want to hear, we've painted a picture of young people, older people playing games, high expectation of interactivity, and sense of really wanting to interact with the IP that they love. What are your predictions for a year from now? What are your predictions then also for 5 years from now on how media will change, particularly the way we interoperate with media?
Well, we talked about this on the call, which I thought was really exciting, and it's something that I've talked about publicly a lot. I think eventually the experience, whether it be film, television, games, will be very much created by the community. So you release toolkits and then see how it evolves. And Little Big Planet for Sony, I think, is one of the most innovative games out there to really show that. Minecraft, an explosion. So I think the next phase for Hollywood and television is how do they, become less of a static sort of one-way communication. Because our minds are, even the old ones, we're all getting trained to be very much more interactive with everything.
Jerry, do you agree with that?
I do, and one thing I would add to that is I think the successful companies are the ones who are having conversations with their customers, dialogues as opposed to monologues.
That's right.
I think historically companies have been very good as far as the monologue.
So what's that going to look like in 5 years, real quick?
So I think what that means is that when you interact with that customer, you and the more you touch them, I think you have a broader sense of their history, what they have done, as opposed to kind of starting that conversation from square one every time. That's where the collection of data and really getting that broad picture is very
Amazon
important.
model. We're tracking everything. We're making
Yep,
recommendations. We know you better than ever,
Yep.
and that's going to hit TV.
And that
is
is
your
a
prediction.
conversation, though. I think rather than
Yeah.
thinking of it as not being creative, even marketing executives now are forced to understand data, but it's a dialogue with your customer. And it is a communication. And if you look at it from that standpoint, it can be very meaningful for your own growth as a company.
Well put. Marcus, prediction.
We'll all be recovering from the Apple-Google wars.
Yeah.
We'll all be living underground. No, I mean, from a games perspective, we will have the next generation of consoles here. They will be cloud-based with the PS4 and the Xbox 720. We will be able to stream the content to the official tablets that will no doubt come with them and take that stuff on the road. I mean, we're already seeing some of that with the Sony Vita and the PS3 right now. I think for games, more people or more companies, I hope, will raise this mod factor. They will put the content creation kits out there for console and for PC, because PC is a thriving system, and it's been around for 10, 15 years, and it's not going anywhere. I think the future for gaming is phenomenal as long as people can interact both ways. Gamers are getting very entitled. The game came out called Mass Effect 3 this year. It was the final part of a trilogy. And the whole, if nobody's familiar with it, it's a sci-fi trilogy, role-playing game. You invest hundreds of hours in creating your character and doing these various missions and creating your character's persona. And then the third version, the third part of the game, this is the grand payoff. And the ending was not to the community's satisfaction. These guys had invested hundreds of hours, and they revolted. They revolted and bombarded Electronic Arts and BioWare, the company that made the game, with so many tweets, petitions, etc., that they actually went and rewrote the game. They rewrote the game engine and released it 4 months later.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, that is consumer power, and that's what we're going to get with movies and television moving forward.
Lad, few seconds. What's your prediction?
Well, I think it's scalability. I don't think that the great creators are going to go away and not make movies, frankly. I don't think it's all going to be customization, but I think it's going to be an option. If you sit down and watch a great movie or TV show, you don't reach for your iPad during it because you are
entertained and encapsulated into that world during that event. And at the same time, if you want to, then you are going to look for the additional content. So I think it's more that there's going to be a little bit at every level, and the trick is going to be how do we leverage what are the abilities of the hyper interactive game making, fan fiction writing kid to the parent of that kid who just wants to watch it and not be bothered with 15 facts and a running commentary during that performance. And that's really, it's finding the ability to reach the audience.
Last word.
5 years from now, I think you see a #1 game in Apple's App Store that was made by a kid who's under 16, and I think myself and Marcus are co-presenting some sort of video show about Doctor Who.
All right, that's that we look forward to. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's thank our panel, and thank you very much.